Hello, hello, fellow reselling addicts, because that is what we are. This is episode number 87 of eBay the Right Way. Today's date is November 16th, 2022, and my guest is Dr. Stephen Gittler, who you may remember as the bottle cap seller from the $100 thread in the Facebook group and the $100 supersize sales video, the cover photo from the August 16th, 2022 video. A couple of very quick announcements. As promised, I am keeping the premium library students updated via this podcast. Last week, I added a fun lesson about vintage undergarments. Don't laugh. Did you know that some of these, a single pair of granny panties, can sell for over $200? There are keywords and characteristics about this product, and many collectors buy them. You might be thinking, why would anyone collect vintage undergarments? Well, it's like creating a time capsule, and some people just love them and the nostalgia. Not necessarily to wear, but to add to their collections. The lesson is about 20 minutes long, so you will come away knowing many things you probably did not know before. And remember to check the monthly updates page for what has been added and links to the lessons. Also, don't forget to get your 2023 calendar available in my eBay store. This makes a great, unique gift for yourself or another reseller. Nothing else like it exists. And you can check the feedback on my eBay feedback page about the calendar and all of my educational products from other sellers so you can see how they like it before you buy one. Okay, now let's meet Dr. Gittler.
Hello, listeners. Today we have Steve with us, whose claim to fame is bottle caps. Well, so far. How are you doing this morning, Steve?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for coming on. So let's go over where you're located.
I'm in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, which is about 15 minutes outside of Philadelphia.
Okay. Well, you don't sound like a New Jerseyan.
Yeah, well, North Jersey, it's probably more what you're thinking of, more up toward New York. No, I'm born and raised in Philadelphia.
Okay. Well, people tell me I don't sound like I'm from the South, and that's because I've worked on it all my life not to. I mean, I can if I want to, I just don't. Okay. So New Jersey, and when did you get started on eBay?
I started on eBay in May of 1997.
Oh, you started way before me.
Yes.
So what is the story behind what inspired you to start selling?
So story goes back long before eBay. I was already a reseller. I was raised always going to yard sales and thrift shops and auctions with my parents. That was just something we always did. My parents were always collecting one thing or another, so we were always hunting for stuff. And they were both children of the Depression, so they were always looking for bargains and secondhand things. They taught me the importance of that. My cousin and I started selling at a flea market when I was probably 13 or 14. I think we did it because he and his father were downsizing after my aunt died, so he was selling stuff to clean out the house. And then my mom gave us stuff to sell, and then some other relatives gave us stuff to sell. And I would go trash picking and find things to sell.
Mm-hmm.
We did a little bit of buying. I remember there was a grocery store chain that went out of business, and they were liquidating everything. And we went in and bought like household stuff, like paper towel racks and birthday candles and night lights, and we would sell that stuff.
Okay.
And then what really got me into reselling beyond that was I started collecting Walt Disney memorabilia back in the 70s.
Oh,
I joined some collecting clubs and subscribed to some newsletters and all. And there were always classified ads in the back. Send us a self-addressed stamped envelope. Remember that.
yes.
And we'll send you a list. And I would order some of those lists, and some of them were pretty nice, and some of them were just a couple of handwritten pages of things they were selling. And eventually, if you collect anything, you end up with duplicates and things you don't want. And I was like, I could do that. I could make a mailing list. So in 1986, I started sending out a 2-page mailing list, which eventually grew to be a 45-page catalog.
Oh,
And I did that for a while. Also, late 80s, early 90s, I started selling in person at toy and collectible shows, where they would have a conference room and, dealers would come and set up. So I did that, a few times a year. And then in 1995, eBay came along and the chatter started right away
hmm,
with, oh, there's this new thing. The dealers were talking about it. There were articles about it in the newsletters. So I got on eBay in, early 97. And I remember the first thing I sold was a Walt Disney World Epcot Center preview guide from 1981. So about
hmm.
16 years old at that point. And everything was auctioned back then. And it sold at auction for $17. And this is an item that if I had put it on my table at a show, I might have charged $3 for or $4 for. And here, all of a sudden it went for $17 to somebody, across the country. So it was clear that, this was going to be different than, depending on the people who happen to walk past your table at a show.
Right.
And, sure enough, over time, the in-person shows gradually started dying out because the dealers started migrating to eBay.
Hmm.
And, I stopped doing the mail order catalog, which I was probably losing money on in the end, but it was fun and it was a way to,
Hmm.
get out there. And, ended up doing more and more eBay. And by, late 90s, early 2000s, I was doing eBay pretty heavily. I was usually listing 10 items a day for 10-day auctions because that was the standard back then.
Hmm.
So I had 100 auctions running at any time. There was a brief period in early 2000 when I was between jobs and I actually was doing eBay, solely. It wasn't enough to replace my income, but it helped. And then, probably mid 2000s, late 2000s, life started getting busy and our daughter was older and work was busy. And I kind of got out of it mostly. Every now and then I'd get the urge to do it and I would put up a few items for a couple of weeks and then I would get out of it again. So there was a pretty long stretches of not doing it.
Hmm.
And then what got me back into it now is last spring, a cousin of mine who we were very close to passed away. And I was responsible for his estate. So I took a leave of absence from work and I spent 6 weeks cleaning out his house down in Florida. I sold a lot of things on Marketplace because it was bigger things, furniture and tools and that kind of stuff. I
Hmm.
sold a couple of things on eBay while I was there, but I didn't have all my packing materials and shipping and everything. So I couldn't really get into eBay from there. But when we were done cleaning everything out, we rented a truck and we brought a whole bunch of stuff home, and I started listing all of that stuff. And then started, listing back in my own stuff too, because I still had a lot of old stock. And then earlier this year, I started going to estate sales, which wasn't really something I had done before, but I saw an ad for one in the development across the street from us. So I went to that, bought a few things, sold them within a few days. And I was like, well, I could do this, And I've been going to estate sales every week since then and yard sales in season and the thrift shops and one auction so far. I haven't gotten back to the auction. So,
Oh, that's a
so it's
lot of history.
yeah,
So can I ask what year you were born?
I was born in 1964.
Okay, so you're
So I'm
2 years
58
older
at the
than
moment.
me. So yeah, you were a teen in the 80s.
Right.
So you know all that stuff. Okay. Yeah, I remember that whole mail order, or if in the back of magazines,
Right.
just send us a self-addressed stamped envelope.
Exactly.
We're really dating ourselves with that. And you're a Disney collector now. Are you still into that?
We still have a very large collection. We don't really actively collect anymore. Every now and then we'll see a piece that we like, but it's a pretty stable collection at this point. I've actually been thinned it out a little bit, gotten rid of some of the items that we didn't weren't passionate about still having.
So Disney's a very broad category. What kind of things do you collect?
Everything, unfortunately.
Well, I know just the Christmas ornaments is
Oh
a
yeah,
huge segment of that collecting.
yeah, yeah. Well, Disney likes to flood the market. You know,
Yeah,
they'll put out one item, and if it sells well, then they'll put out 10 of them, and if they sell well, they'll put out 100 of them. So
right.
no, but we have everything. We have a lot of figurines, you know, a lot of old toys. You know, I mean, everything from, you know, crystal and some artwork and a lot of theme park souvenirs because we go to Disney World regularly. So a lot of things from the parks and, you know, really a little bit of everything.
Would you say that items are more valuable when they were made during a time that Disney wasn't intentionally creating collectibles, or did they do that from the beginning?
No, they didn't. They definitely didn't do it from the beginning. I think with any collectible category, you're going to find that things that were made to be collected are never the ones that are of value.
Exactly.
You know, it's always the ones that, you know, were just put out as either utilitarian items or practical items, you know, kitchenware or, you know, that kind of thing, you know, with that people, you know, or soap or, you know, something that, you know, they were made, you know, to appeal to people who liked the items, but they weren't necessarily made to be collectibles. You know, if it says collector's item on the box, you know, you probably don't want it.
Yeah, and I love the way you said that because it is confusing when you're first getting into this and you're not a collector. You think, oh, like the Hallmark ornaments or anything, Coca-Cola. I always go back to that.
Right.
You know, limited edition, collectible. Well, they can say limited edition all they want, but you know, when they make 5,000 of them,
Right.
it's not really limited.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, some of the collectible things, some of the made to be collected things can be good depending on how they were made and marketed.
Right.
You know, if they say limited edition of 250 and, you know, it's an item with pretty broad appeal, that's pretty good. You know, you might look
Mhm.
on eBay and at any time there might be one of them for sale, you know, and it gets a pretty good price. But if it was a limited edition of 10,000, then you're kind of diluting, you know, kind of diluting the market.
Yeah, and I think you just have to look further when it says limited edition to see what does that mean because
Right. Is it actually
there's
a numbered
no
limited edition or it's, you know,
yeah, there's no governing body that says limited edition means X number were made. That
right.
is just a catchphrase that you can put on your listing if it's on the box or whatever, you know, on the bottom of the item or whatever it is. So that can be confusing to non-collectors.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad you clarified that because it just means look further because you don't really know what that means. I think Christopher Radko, that's truly limited edition stuff.
Right.
At least in the early days when he made, you know, one ornament every year, you know, for that year type of thing. So doesn't always mean you've hit the jackpot.
Right.
And now even I think manufacturers are intentionally using those words, even when that's not the case. They're not limited edition.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned Radco. I just sold one a couple of days ago. I posted it on the Money Making Monday yesterday.
Oh, really? I hadn't seen that yet. What was it?
It was Muffy Vanderbeer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I picked that up in a estate sale for $4 and I think I sold it for 65. So
Excellent. Yeah. Yeah, those are great to find. Okay, so you've been plugging along doing eBay off and on for years, and now you're out there in the wild looking for everything. So we must hear the bottle cap story.
I figured you would ask that.
Yeah, well, and for the listeners, I guess it was a couple of months ago, you posted one that sold for like 300 and then another one that sold for more than that.
Yeah. So I've been going to estate sales pretty much every week since February. And in June, I went to an estate sale. And good lesson. I actually got there late. You know, a lot of people think if you're not the first one in the door, it's not worth going to.
Mm-hmm.
Or they look at all the pictures that they show on the app. And if they don't see anything in the pictures they like, they don't bother going. Invariably, the things I sell were not in the pictures,
Mm-hmm.
because it's the things that the people taking the pictures didn't see value in. You talk about that all the time, the unusual sells, the odd sells.
Yeah, and it's like I agree on estate sale photos online. They show you the china and the crystal and the flatware and the furniture, and I wouldn't buy any of that for my business model. I
Right.
like to see pictures of this basement with just boxes and boxes of stuff, and you can't even
Exactly.
tell what's in there, or just little smalls shoved everywhere in bookcases and closets, and
The bathroom
I'm
and all
zooming
stuff
in
like
on the
that.
pictures, like looking for stuff that I recognize.
So anyway, this estate sale started at 9 in the morning. We had an appointment that morning, so I got there about 11:30. It was the house, and then they had this huge garage. It was like almost like a farm garage, 10-car, big garage,
Oh, wow.
tractor trailer full of stuff on the property. So I went in the garage. I ended up spending 2 hours picking in this garage because it was just packed, just wall to wall
Oh,
stuff.
that's like a dream come true.
Right. And it was all old stuff. It was all stuff from the 40s and 50s and 60s. So I got there about 11:30, and a couple of times, I made several passes in and out of the garage because I was taking stuff out to pile up, outside that I was going to buy. And I kept, I had seen the box of bottle caps. It was in like a wooden fruit crate. And, I kept, going back and forth and getting other things. And then finally at the end, I was outside with my pile, and I called the cashier over and paid for everything. And I said, "Oh, there's one other thing I'm interested in the garage. There's this box of old bottle caps." I said, I don't know if I want them all, because it looked like there were a couple hundred in there. And before I did that, I had looked up a couple, and I saw a couple were selling for like $8.95 or $12.95. And it's like, oh, there's got to be like 300 caps in this box. If I can get $8 or $10 for a few of them, I'll make some money if I can get them for a good price.
Mm-hmm.
So she came in with me, and like I say, I go to their sales every week, so she knows me, and I had already bought a bunch of stuff. So she looked at them, and by this time it's like 1:30 in the afternoon. So many people had been through this garage, and I think it was a one-day sale. So she said, "Give me $10 for the box." So I paid $10. I took the whole crate home. I figured, it's $10. Came home. I started looking through them. A lot of them were the same, but there were a bunch of different ones in there. So I picked out a few that were interesting looking, like, kind of nice graphics or something unusual looking. I put one on eBay that night for a $9.99 auction. And the next morning it already had a bid. And I was like, well, that's unusual. eBay auctions don't usually get bids right away. And that second night, I put two more up for auction for $9.99. So almost right after I did that, somebody messaged me and said that Finks cap that you just listed, don't take any offers on it because it's worth a lot. But if you want to sell it quick, I'll give you $50. I said, thank you for reaching out. I appreciate that. I'm going to let the auction run.
Mm-hmm.
I never take offers on auctions. I had forgotten to turn it off on that one. And I knew if he was offering me 50, it had to be worth 100. So the week goes on. Thursday comes, the first bottle cap that I listed ends, sold for $157.50.
Okay.
Which, obviously we were surprised by that. Second night, the other two end. The one ends for $83.99. And the one the guy messaged me about ends for $609.99.
And you thought, oh, it's probably going to sell for 100.
Yeah,
No,
well,
it's going to sell for 6 times that.
Right. Well, the same guy we had been chatting throughout the week. He was kind of educating me about bottle caps, which I appreciated because I didn't know the first thing about them. He said that the last time that particular cap showed up, there was a batch of them that had been removed from a piece of folk art, like they were hammered onto a frame, and they all had a nail hole through the center.
Oh.
And mine was, practically mint condition. So I was like, so is this the first time one of these has come to market? He said, yeah, as far as he knows, this is the first one, that has turned up without a hole through the center of it. So during the week, he said, you're probably going to get $300 for that cap. Once he saw how things were going and he talked to some of his friends. And it ended up selling for twice that. And then, of course, I sent a second chance offer to the person who bought the $157 cap, and they bought another one for 140, and then they bought four more from me for 150. And then a couple of weeks later, I sold another of the $600 ones, which went for 365. Because only the first one's worth 600. As soon as the collectors find out there's a bunch of them, that have turned up, the value drops pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point today, it's probably now $100 cap because several of them have hit the market. But I bought those in June, and as it turned out, I was thinking there were like 300 caps in the box. There ended up being about 1,600 caps in the box. Because I hadn't really looked that deep at the sale, but the crate was like 12 by 16, and they were about 4 inches deep.
And I bet that you're going through every single one at this point.
Yeah, we sorted them all, and I've been selling them little by little. I did a couple of bulk sales to a couple of collectors because I didn't want to be selling bottle caps, for eternity.
Well, I mean, if they're going to sell for that much, why not?
Yeah, I just sold a couple 2 weeks ago. I mean, I'm putting them out periodically. You can't dump them all at one time because then the value.
Well, that's what another seller said is when you have something like that that is valuable and you have multiples, don't do a multi-quantity listing.
Right.
Just throw one out there, see what happens, and then you can either do second chance offers if the price is really high, or just wait and let the market kind of come to equilibrium again, and then put it out there, because you don't want people to know you have 10 of them.
Right.
That's your secret as a seller.
Right. Yeah. So, I did sell some in bulk, and, but I still have a whole box full of them, and little by little, I'll put them out there. They're easy to list, picture of the front, picture of the back, and they're easy to ship, obviously. Yeah.
Do you ship them in something that weighs 3 ounces or more so that you can get the insurance, and you don't just put it in an envelope, do you?
Yeah, no, I've been putting them in like a little jewelry box, and then a padded envelope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because something like that, if you just put it in an envelope, like a letter, it doesn't have tracking, and you kind of have to at least put 3 ounces on it, so it's considered a package.
Yeah, I'm sending it as first class package.
I know I'm just saying that for the listeners, because I get that question all the time when they're selling really lightweight items. You want to package it in a way so it's 3 ounces or more, or at least just put 3 ounces on the listing so that they get tracking. And because losing a $600 tiny item in the mail would not be great.
No. Yeah, it got shipped as a package and got insured.
Have you kept up with how much you've made off the bottle caps?
About $4,000.
Oh, really? For a $10 investment?
Yep.
That's fantastic. It's just like you just never know what you're going to come across out there in the wild.
I had no idea when I bought them.
Yeah, because you explain that in your posting on the $100 sales. You're like, I didn't know anything about this.
Right.
Good for you. Well, circling back to the Disney items, what Disney item have you sold for the most?
That's a good question. I mean, I still sell some Disney stuff. When I started, it was almost all Disney stuff. But I don't think I've had any really big Disney sales. Certainly under 100. I don't think I've sold anything Disney large, but I was always more into the small things.
Mm-hmm.
And because I used to sell in-person shows, you could sell, $3, $5 items, at your table.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that on eBay because, the shipping kills you and the fees kill you. But a lot of $20, $30, $50 items, I can't think offhand of anything over 100 that I sold, from Disney.
Well, I have a quick Disney story. This my highest selling Disney item. I went to a garage sale that was in the neighborhood I was living in, and I just was leaving that day to go somewhere and passed it, and they really didn't have very much. They just had, like one table with toys, and they didn't have very much. And I was like, well, I'm right here. I'll stop and see what they have. And on that table were two Disney snow globes. One was the Little Mermaid under the sea with all the multiple globes on it with all the
most valuable one.
Yeah. And there was another one. I can't remember what it was. It was much smaller, but still about 20 years old. And they were in the boxes with the styrofoam and everything.
That's the best way, because otherwise shipping them is a nightmare.
They had like $20 on each of them. And, being the negotiator, I'm like, well, I'll give you 30 for both of those. And, I had to get some kind of deal.
Right.
So, and I was like the lady on the IKEA commercial. Don't anybody notice, just don't look at the man behind the curtain. And I sold the under the sea one for about $250. And then I sold the other one for at least 50. I think it might have been Cinderella or the princesses or something like that. And they sold very quickly. And I could not believe, a few houses down from me, I found this. This was in somebody's house and they just pulled it out for their garage sale. And just, to me, that's just opportunity is everywhere. You just don't know what's going to show up in front of you. And, obviously the more you know, the more successful you're going to be. But that was, I think I found an ornament one time, a Christmas ornament I sold for about 50. So, but I tell you what, I'm so glad that snow globe with the multiple snow globes on it was with the original box and the styrofoam, because that would have been, and then I double boxed it. I put it in another box with lots of packing material, and it arrived perfectly fine. And the person was very happy. But I was like, oh, that is an added bonus when it comes with the original packaging. And it's such a fragile, cumbersome item to ship.
Yeah, I have one. I have a Sleeping Beauty snow globe that I think we bought it for ourselves, but I've been trying to sell it, but I've been trying to sell it on Marketplace because I don't have the box, and it's got a lot of delicate pieces, and there's no way it's going to travel, get there in one piece. I remember, they used to sell those at the Disney stores when those were big, and half the time, if you would look at the one on the shelf, it would be broken because they had so many little delicate pieces, or a wand or a wing or something, and they would just break off from being handled in the store.
Yeah, very fragile. And that's a good point, to try to sell that kind of thing locally.
Yeah. You mentioned opportunity all around. Something I learned about just recently is there's an app called Freebie Alerts.
Oh.
I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
It's a consolidator app that consolidates all the free listings from Marketplace, OfferUp, Trash Nothing, and a couple of other sites. So if you install the app on the phone, and set notifications, you set your filter for distance. And anytime somebody posts anything for free, you get a little notice. And I've actually gotten a number of things that way. I just installed it about 2 months ago, and I've already gotten a number of things that I have resold and are currently selling because, people give away all kinds of things. People throw out, all kinds of things when they're cleaning out a house, or, moving, or somebody died or whatever, and they just don't want to deal with it. So at least they'll post, curb alert, and, you'll look and, there might be one little box or a couple of things, or it might be the whole curb is lined with stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm definitely going to check that out. Is it free?
It's free. Yeah.
So they probably get you with ads.
Yeah, it's really not bad. There are ads, but they're not like pop-ups that are disruptive.
So is it like GPS based where you put in your zip code?
Yeah, you put in your zip code, and then, if you want 10 miles, 20 miles, 30 miles from your location.
I'm definitely going to try that. I love that idea.
Yeah. I live in a, pretty not congested area, but, well-populated area. So, within 10 miles, I've got everything. Actually, 10 miles happens to include Philadelphia. I wish I could filter out Philadelphia because I don't want to cross the bridge and pay the toll just to go.
Oh, okay, right.
But Philadelphia happens to be within our 10-mile radius, and that's. But I've picked up a number of things. I picked up somebody posted the other day, a curb alert, and I could see in the picture that there were some DVD like box sets from a TV show. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
went over there, and it turned out not only were there box sets, but they were all sealed. So, um,
Ah,
yeah,
nice.
they had all the seasons of a show. The first season was open, all the other seasons were sealed. So they must have bought them all, started the show, not liked it,
Right.
and we're just tossing them out.
Yeah. And you mentioned people giving away stuff. And I want to just comment on that because as resellers, we see dollar signs on everything.
Right.
That's just something that's programmed into us, I think, because that's just the first place my mind always goes is what's the money situation here? Whatever the situation is. So it's like we don't understand sometimes, like, why would they give all this away when it's worth so much? And it's either they don't know because they're not a reseller, or they don't care because all they're thinking about is getting through whatever it is, the reason they're giving stuff away. They have to move, the moving truck's going to be there, or it's an estate where they're cleaning it out. And it takes a long time, as you know, to do that.
Right.
So the moral of the story for the listeners is don't assume everybody knows what you know, or even cares that they're giving stuff away. I've done it. I just moved and I went to Goodwill every day for 2 weeks. Just, I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to take that. And not just thinning out my inventory, but my own personal belongings. And so that's how this stuff ends up out there is people just don't have time to deal with it, or they don't want to.
Yeah. No, I've done it myself. We've had, a couple of yard sales in recent years. And, I said that at the end of the yard sale, whatever doesn't sell is going to Goodwill because, we were trying to clear space. So, and I've done that, locally, a lot of times on Saturday night, people will post online, all this stuff is free. We had a yard sale today, here's all the stuff that's left, come and get it if you want it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So, let's talk about your eBay business. Do you work another job, or is eBay all you do?
No, I'm a family practice physician. I was in practice for 24 years, and then about 6 years ago, I switched to urgent care.
Uh-huh.
Back last November, a year ago, I went part-time, and this past August, I went per diem. So I work like 8 hours a week, 8 or 12 hours a week. So I had always, kind of joked that eBay would be my retirement job. So I've been kind of easing into retirement and ramping up my eBay business in the process.
So we need to call you Dr. Gittler.
Yes.
I think you're the first doctor I've had on my podcast. That's interesting. Did the events of 2020 help you ease out of that industry?
Yeah, I was full-time urgent care at that time, so we were totally frontline dealing with that, which was very stressful. I've been in practice for 30 years and had never seen anything like, working frontline in a pandemic when we had very limited information, not knowing what was going on, and people all around me, coworkers all around me coming down with COVID, left and right. I managed to avoid it then. So
that was my next question: is did you come down with COVID?
No, as far as I know, unless I had an asymptomatic case, I've managed to avoid it. My wife and daughter both had it, but recently. So after vaccines, and we knew everything about it.
So as a physician, what do you think about the online doctor's appointments where you get on Zoom and you have a virtual appointment?
Yeah, I think there's value in them. Our urgent care started offering them for COVID screening specifically, because most of the time, if people had, kind of routine mild cases of COVID, they didn't really need to be seen. They just needed to, somebody to take a look at them, make sure they were not unstable. And we now offer urgent care telehealth for a variety of things. And if they feel they need an in-person evaluation, then they tell them to come to one of our physical sites. But a lot of minor things they're able to treat without an in-person visit, which patients love.
Yeah, it's convenient for everybody. Where'd you go to medical school?
I went to Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine in Philadelphia.
Okay.
So I graduated in 1990 and did my family practice residency. And then I was in private family practice for 24 years before I switched to urgent care in
Oh,
2016.
wow. Okay. So you were doing the Disney collecting, going to the trade shows and all that while you were in medical school.
Medical school, internship, residency, all that time.
That's kind of like East meets West, like two very different worlds colliding.
Very much.
Okay. Now, are you, is it just you in the household or you have family?
I'm married. My wife and I have been married for 30 years, and we have a 27-year-old daughter who lives with us.
Okay. Are they involved in the eBay world at all?
Not in selling. My wife will, come along when we, sometimes when I'm sourcing, we'll go to the thrift shop, or, she came to the auction with me, or,
Mhm.
occasionally to the estate sales. My daughter is not really involved at all. She'll occasionally
Okay.
give me something she doesn't want anymore to sell on eBay. But
Of course. Yeah, you're like the goose that lays the golden egg. Um, so do you have a lot of backstock death pile stuff that's not listed?
yeah, I mean, there's always some. I've been on a 20-year effort to clean out a garage, um, which is a never-ending thing. We have a lot of Disney items that we've collected over the years that aren't displayed, that are kind of packed up in the garage. So I try and get through those and see if there's ones that I don't really want anymore, so I'll sell off some of those. I still have some old stock from when I was doing the shows and all. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of them are smaller items that are a little hard to sell on eBay unless you can like lot things up and sell 5 or 10 of something.
Hmm.
Like Happy Meal toys and those kind of things. There's only a few of those that are really of value. I've tried putting up 30 Happy Meal toys for 1999 and can't even move them that way. So some of that stuff will eventually have to get donated.
Yeah, it's like Beanie Babies and all those things that, again, were made to be collectible. I think when they first started, some of the Beanie Babies were in the Happy Meals.
Yeah, there was a couple of series of the mini ones that were in Happy Meals.
And I don't know if those are worth anything or not, but
I
it
don't know.
seems like whatever the first wave is of any kind of collectible, that's what you want, is that's going to be
Right.
worth the most.
And that goes back to the limited edition thing, because a lot of times the first wave, they won't make as many. And when they see how well they do, then they make a second wave of, 10 times as many. Disney
Right.
did that. The Disney store did that years ago. They put out a set of collector's watches. There were 6 watches. I think they like released them one a week for 6 weeks. And if you bought all 6, you mailed in your receipt and you got a 7th watch.
Ah,
But I think the first edition was like 1,000 watches, and it sold out in a day or two. The series sold out. So of course, 6 months later they came out with a new series of 5,000 watches, and that one eventually sold out, but it took a little while. It didn't sell out overnight like the first set. And then
hmm.
they came out with a third set that I think was 10,000 or 15,000, and they never got rid of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You want to talk about some of your other sales other than bottle caps and
Uh,
Disney?
sure.
I know you
Um,
sell all kinds of stuff.
I sell all kinds of things. I made a comment on the Money Making Monday post yesterday. I said I love how absolutely random the things we all sell are. It's just like complete randomness when you look through all the posts.
Yeah. And today I'm making the seller shout out video, which is just that, is like no price point. And I look for things that are just like so random. Like, we all know about certain items to look for, but then you just think, "Ah, really, that sold? Why does somebody want that?" And that's where my mind goes, is like, what are they going to do with it? What do they want that for?
But I mean, as far as other sales, until the bottle cap sale, my highest sale up until then had actually been from like 2000, when I was doing it, years ago. I went to a yard sale and they had all this stuff out on tables in the driveway. And just inside the garage, they had one more table with some boxes underneath full of stuff they hadn't put out. So of course I went picking through the boxes, and there was a display model of a cruise ship, like from a travel agency, the ship on a wooden base with a plastic case, and the case was cracked. I bought it for $1. I came home, put it on eBay for auction because everything was auctioned back then. I don't remember what I started it at, probably $10. And it sold in a week for $213. And this is 20 some years ago.
Right.
That would be a nice sale today. It was a really nice sale 20 some years ago. So again, it's the stuff that, even the people having the sale didn't see any value in. They didn't even take it out of the box. More recently, I went to an estate sale, and I had gone all through the house, already checked out, and realized that we entered the house through a sun porch, and I had never looked at the porch. I had gone straight into the house. So out on the porch, they had bookshelves lining the walls, and there was this collector's set of Agatha Christie novels. So I went back in and I said, "How much do you want for all of the Agatha Christie books? I don't know how many there are." And she said, "Let's start with $1 each, go out and count them and come back in and tell me, how many there are, and we'll go from there." So I went out and we counted, there were 65 of them. So she gave me the 65 books for $50. And I did one listing, one choose your title, drop down listing. And they just started flying off the shelf. Within a few weeks, I had sold, about, probably 40 some of them at like $10 a piece. And, that was a couple of months ago. I've now sold 57 of the 65. So I spent 50 and I've made like $520.
Oh, that's great.
And it was simple because, like I say, I made one listing. I just had to type out all the titles and just stick them in a padded envelope or a box, because most people are buying multiples. They're buying 6 and 8 at a time. And so, don't overlook the books.
Were they hardcover?
They were hardcover. It was a collector's set that Bantam Books had put out. So they were all bound the same. They were all in this nice, like blue leatherette binding with gold embossed titles. I think they were put out in the 90s. I don't know how many were in the set. I mean, I got 60.
I'm sorry. Did you do a multi-quantity listing with the different titles, or are you listing all of them separately?
I did one listing with a choose your own title for $10 each, or $9 if you bought 2 or more. Okay. So 10% off if you bought 2 or more.
Yeah,
and most of the people bought 2, 3, 4, 6, 8. I had several people who bought 7 or 8 at a time.
Yeah, and people ask this all the time when they find sets, should I sell it as a set or individually? And I'm of the belief that individually is better, because you've got all these people with incomplete sets that are trying to, complete them. And you're probably more likely to get a whole bunch of $10 sales than that one big sale of all of them together. And what a shipping nightmare that would be for 60 something books.
Right.
Shipping all those together.
Yeah, when I had looked up the comps, I mean, there were a bunch that were sold in lots, but they were small lots. They were like 8 or 10 books, because I guess, that's what they had. But I was like, well, I've got 65 of them. I don't think anybody's going to want to buy the 65 books. I'll put them up as a lot. And then maybe, when I get down to the end, like right now, I think I have 8 left. I might just take down that listing and put up the lot of 8, just to finish them off.
Just for the stragglers that are still there.
Right.
That makes sense.
Okay.
What else you got?
Another good recent sale, which I also posted to the group. I went to a sale in September. I was going to say last month, but I guess that's November now. And I bought, I had seen in the app, one of the times I actually bought something that was in the pictures. They had 2 sets of Lionel trains they were selling. And I don't usually get trains because they usually get snatched up by the first guy who goes through the door. There's, the train guys are usually pretty aggressive, and they'll be first in line to buy them. But for some reason, they weren't at this sale. So I had actually gone to another room to get some glassware before. And then I asked someone where the trains were, if they were still there. And she said, "Oh yeah, they're over in the corner in a bin." So I went and I looked at them and, opened them up, and they were in great condition. And they had a sign on them that they wanted $250. I offered them $200 and they took it. I got home and I posted on my personal Facebook page if anybody had an O-gauge train layout, because I needed to test a couple of engines, because I wanted to know if they worked before I listed them. And a friend of mine responded and said, the hobby shops have test tracks where you can just take your train in and they'll tell you if it works, which I had never thought of. So I went over to a local hobby shop and they tested both trains. They both worked. And I took video of them running when they tested them.
Oh, very smart.
So I put up the first listing for the more valuable set with 11 pictures plus the video, and I priced it at $595, which I thought was kind of high, but I wanted to leave room for offers, and it sold the same night for full price. So,
oh, nice.
And then I listed the other set, which was a smaller set and not as desirable, but still very nice. I listed it for $299 to leave room for bargaining, and it took about 2 weeks, and I actually sold it 2 days ago for $225.
You're just like, you have the Midas touch. Or you just know what to look for after all these years of collecting.
Well, like I say, I've been going to yard sales and auctions and thrift shops and antique shops since I was born, basically.
Right. Okay. What would you say like the oddest thing is you've ever sold? The strangest or weirdest?
Back in like 2000 time when I was selling regularly, there used to be a couple of auctions that I went to, and you would buy box lots of things. And I bought a box lot that had some old medical equipment in it. And I was probably the only one in the room who knew what any of the things were.
Ah, right.
And there was an electric cautery unit that they use when they're doing surgery to cauterize the wound. And it was probably, I was familiar with them because I had one in my office, but the one in my office, this one was probably 40 years older than the one I had in my office. So I sold that. I don't remember what I got for it, but I got good, I got good money for it. And I paid like $5 for the box lot. And there were a couple of other medical things in there, that I sold. I don't even know if you're allowed to sell some of those things now.
Yeah, they keep getting more strict with that.
Yeah. But yeah, that was certainly unusual. And, obviously $600 for a bottle cap is pretty unusual. Yeah.
Yes. That's everyone's dream. What about advice for other sellers? And you have a lifetime of doing this, because I hear a lot from people that they're scared to get started or they feel like they don't know enough. What would you say to them?
I think for the people who are just getting started, it's kind of advice that you give regularly is to, just start with stuff, start with stuff around the house, start with stuff that, is easy to list and easy to ship. You don't want your first thing to be, a china cabinet.
Yeah.
Start with easy stuff and cheap stuff and, not the super fragile stuff. Take a little time to learn about shipping. I'll see posts online, I just sold my first item. What do I do now? How do I ship it? It's like, well, you needed to answer that question before you listed your first item.
Or before you buy it to
right.
list it. It's like, I do that all the time. That would sell for a lot, but do I really want to fool with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
I do that all the time.
Then I go over to the accessories bin and find some gloves or a hat that I can sell for $50. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this.
Exactly. And then, gradually expand, we always say sell what you know, but that also means keep expanding what you know. Look through the eBay listings, go to an antique shop, look around, see what things are selling for. It doesn't mean you're going to buy anything because they're selling full price, but see what kind of things are out on the market and what kind of money they bring. So that if you see one of those things at a yard sale for $1, you'll say, hey, I saw this at the antique store for $50. And you'll know you can make some money there.
In 10 years from now, it's all going to be different. Well, some things will be the same, but more things are going to be older. And so it's just a constantly moving target of values of things and what to sell. because, things become popular based on trends and, fashion trends, home decor trends. 5 years from now, there's going to be trends that we've never heard of yet. So it's staying in the know on all that, so that you can recognize these things, because I guarantee you, every single seller, I don't care how long you've been doing it, how many things you've sold, you're walking by stuff because you've never had experience selling that item and you just don't know.
Right.
So go ahead.
I mean, the other thing I mentioned earlier with things like estate sales or yard sales, don't think you have to be the first one there. You can get there late and find good things. A lot of estate sales are 2 or 3 or 4 days long. Sometimes you go on that last day, the thing that was priced at $50 on the first day is now priced at $10 because nobody bought it at $50. Don't think that if there's nothing good in the pictures, you shouldn't go, because they don't show what's in the bathroom cabinets and they don't show what's in the basement. And I've bought bars of soap that I've sold. And
I think these estate sale, I guess you would call them marketers, the one that put together the pictures to go online, they're using their knowledge of what sells for the most
right
at estate sales. They're not putting that together for eBay sellers. And we're two different, it's two different markets, I think. Because like we said, we want rooms with boxes full of stuff that you can just sort through and find treasures at the bottom. And the estate sale mindset is more like, they know their brands, they know their types of items, their vintage items, and they're maximizing that, rather than, I don't know if you get a certain number of pictures on those estate sale sites, or if it's unlimited, or if you have to pay more, but some of them only put up like 5 pictures, and it's
it really varies.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have to pay for more, but sometimes there'll be 20 pictures, sometimes there'll be 100 pictures, sometimes there'll be 400 pictures. So it really depends. I don't know how it works on their end if they pay more, but I do the same thing as you. I'll be looking at the picture of the china, the fancy china piece, to see what's in the background.
Yeah.
That they didn't put in the picture.
Yeah, I do that all the time. Like on TV shows, I'm always looking in the background. And there's so many now that are true crime that took place in the 80s and 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're buying these props on eBay to use when they film these, they used to call them mini series, but I don't know what they call them now. Like Hulu has something about true crime and it's 5 episodes. So, and the clothing, the home decor, the cars, just everything is, you feel like you're in that time period. They've done so well, but they have to get this stuff somewhere.
Yeah, I've never sold anything to a prop department as far as I know, but I see those posts all the time.
Well, but you don't know, someone could just be buying it under their name.
Right. They that's what I said. As far as I know, I haven't, but I maybe I have.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to mention, because obviously we're all on social media. The other piece of advice I would give is that people need to ignore the negativity on the social media.
Thank you.
I see so many posts, eBay is dead. There's a recession. Nobody's buying anything but necessities. I love that one, because if you look at you look at what I'm selling, there's not a necessity among them. Nobody needs a $600 train set or a $600 bottle cap or a $200 figurine. But I love the posts that say, my sales are slow because eBay's dead and nobody's buying anything but necessities. It's like, just ignore those people.
And I don't think that's in my Facebook group.
No.
Because we don't even allow that.
No.
I know there's lots of other groups that are not moderated as far as the negative comments.
Yes.
And people just love to do a pile on with that. You got 8 to 10 people talking about, woe is me and ain't it awful. And it's just, that's not going to accomplish anything. And that's why I do the videos I do with showing what's sold, because these things are selling, and you can't dispute that when you go look at completed listings, those things really sold.
Yep.
I will never agree with eBay is dead because I think it's a recession-proof business. Because okay, yeah, you need some new jeans. Do you want to go to Old Navy and pay $30, or do you want to get them on eBay for 10?
Right.
Or, whatever the item is, clothing is pretty much a replenishable. It does wear out. And we all need it. So, and then the definition of necessity is different among different people. I don't think a $600 bottle cap will ever be a necessity, but some people have plenty of money and that's where they put it, is into their collections.
Right. I mean,
they're not going to stop doing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even in bad times, even during the Depression, I mean, the movies did well, because people wanted, needed some entertainment. They needed something light. So maybe that's adding a special piece to their collection. They may not have a lot of money. They might not be able to go on vacation this year, but maybe instead of spending a couple thousand on vacation, they spend 100 for something that they really like that, brings them some joy when times are tough.
Yeah, I totally agree. But as far as the negativity posts, it always occurs to me, like when I see that, okay, here's this person sitting on Facebook complaining and whining about their problems. Why aren't you listing more items? Why aren't you out getting more stuff to sell? Why aren't you focusing on your business rather? And some people just want attention. They
Right.
just love to complain. That's their way to get attention. And then other people just put their blinders on and just ignore all that and keep going. And those are the successful sellers. Just, stay out of the weeds, I say.
Right. Well, people say, well, I'm selling the same things I've always been selling, and they're not selling well now. It's like, well, that's a sign that you need to start selling something else.
Yeah. Change is good. And entrepreneurs in general, the successful ones, they're always looking for that next idea. Like, okay, you recognize this isn't working anymore. Got to do something different. And I think fear holds a lot of people back. They stay in their comfort zone of, I've always sold XYZ item, and they don't want to try something different because it might not work, and then they'll feel like a failure. And if you just do what you've always done, and stay comfortable, the new things is where we grow. When you do new things is where you grow. And I know personally, I've sold so many different types of items over the years. It's like, oh, that's not working anymore. That's not working anymore. And you have to be willing to just explore the unknown and see if it works. And if it doesn't, then you just check that off, go on to the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly all have failures. I've certainly bought things that didn't sell, or didn't sell for anywhere near what I thought, or didn't sell at all, and ended up getting, going back to Goodwill.
Yeah. So do you prefer the estate sales to the thrift stores?
Yeah, I mean, this year I really got more into the estate sales, and I like yard sales. Yard sales, I know you've talked about how you don't want to drive all over town, for one or two sales. I try and stick to when there's a community sale.
Right.
The whole neighborhood is having sales, and I can just drive up and down the street, and in the course of a few blocks, hit 30 sales. That way it's not, I won't go way out of my way just for one sale.
Right. Yeah. I need to get back into that and refine my process a little better. But I did get frustrated with spending an entire Saturday morning and just not finding anything. And it's like, well, there's 3 thrift stores near here. They're open till 8.
Right.
I can go there. They're full. It's full of merchandise. So I would just kind of say,
I do the thrift stores too. I mean, not on a regular basis. I don't do them, weekly, but I certainly do them too. But, as we've talked about before, prices have been rising at the thrift stores. And, the estate sales are kind of like the thrift stores. It's a house full of stuff. It's not one table in somebody's driveway with a few things. It's a house, they're literally selling everything in that house, every drawer, every closet, every cabinet, every piece of anything in that house is for sale. So it's kind of like walking into a thrift shop where, you get everything from clothing to kitchenware to collectibles to tools to, electronics, you get everything in one place.
And I think estate sales, you have the power to negotiate.
Absolutely.
And thrift stores, you don't usually.
Right.
I've tried, it's like, oh, there's a entire tub over there of trial travel size toiletries. Can I have that whole container for, $10 or whatever? And it just depends on the store and the manager and all that. Usually Goodwill does not negotiate with you, but if it's a smaller, maybe one location thrift store, like a church thrift store or whatever their charity is, they're more willing to negotiate on stuff.
Yeah.
So, but you do have that power at estate sales, which
Right.
is
And the estate sales vary. I mean, I would mention that too. I mean, in my area, there are multiple companies that run estate sales. It's important to go to a couple of sales of each of the companies in your area because they're all a little different. Some of them are much firmer on price. Some of them negotiate more. There's a couple of companies that I've checked out several times and I just won't go to their sales anymore because I just find that they price everything high and they don't negotiate. And there's other companies, it's like the bigger the pile you make, the better your prices get.
Yeah, I think that's important. You have to explore your options and start, checking off, okay, nope, not doing that one again, not doing that one again, and gravitate towards the ones where they'll negotiate because they want to get rid of it. I mean, I know they have a process for the end of the estate sale, whatever they do with all the leftovers, but they'd rather have some money than none at all.
Right.
Okay, well, we have been going an hour and that went by fast. So
Yes.
Any final words?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. This was great. I enjoyed getting to meet you in person. I mean, I'm relatively new to the Facebook group.
Yes, you are.
But I love your show and the videos, and certainly look forward to seeing more.
Great. Well, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy semi-retired day. I think retired and semi-retired really means busier than ever.
Oh,
Busier
absolutely.
than when I had a job.
Absolutely.
So
Busy
now
constantly.
it's time to have fun. And it sounds
Yes.
like you are. Thanks for coming on, and we'll see you on the Facebook group.
Thank you.
Bye.
I love, love, love seeing semi-retired and retired people getting busy with eBay. It is such a fun way to spend time, and you can make money doing it. Today's trivia question, since Dr. Gittler talked about Disney, where did the word Epcot come from? What does it mean? Here are 5 seconds to think about it. Okay, the word Epcot is an acronym for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. It was an unfinished concept for a planned community developed by Walt Disney and designed by Walt Disney Enterprises in the 1960s. Its purpose was to be a real city that would never cease to be a living blueprint of the future, drawing on the latest technology and innovation from American industry. The community was intended to be a major component of Disney's Florida project, a massive property of undeveloped land located near Orlando, Florida during the 1960s. Epcot was to be a utopian, autocratic company town completely controlled by Walt Disney himself, featuring commercial, residential, and industrial and recreational centers connected by a mass multimodal transportation system. Based on ideas stemming from modernism and futurism, it was designed to replace the infrastructure created by urban sprawl that was going on in the United States in the 60s. Needing the flexibility and independence to establish and maintain his own specialized, personalized government, Walt lobbied in the Florida government to create what became the Reedy Creek Improvement District. way more information than you needed to know. But the concept was abandoned by Walt Disney Productions after Walt's death in 1966. And interestingly enough, there are some similarities between Epcot and the lost city of Atlantis, including the circular shape, the water around it, and other features. There is speculation that Walt Disney's vision of Epcot was based on Atlantis. Okay, next week, my guest is Holly, who lives in Delaware, and you may have seen her on the Facebook group and some of her amazing finds. And we had a real fun conversation because we realized that she lived in a suburb of Atlanta where I grew up, and we would have gone to the same high school if she hadn't moved away. You just never know what you're going to have in common with somebody until you start talking to them. Thank you again for spending the last hour with us. And yes, I am stealing this phrase. Thank you for the privilege of your time. But it's true. We have so many distractions in our lives today, and I really do feel it is a privilege that you all choose to listen to my podcast week after week, and it's an honor to be your hostess and see the audience consistently growing over time. So really, thank you for supporting this podcast by tuning in every week. Okay, that's it for this week, and make sure you have a fun day on eBay, because if it isn't fun, what's the point? Talk to you next week. Bye.